All right, guys, hello and welcome into the inaugural 8Sports Nightcap, our new sports talk show that we have going on here at ABC 8 News. You know, this is something new, something that we're going to work through as we go, as the college and high school football season continues. Obviously, some big week one games in the state of Virginia, from Virginia Tech, UVA, Virginia State, and Virginia Union, all got their season started. And of course, we had a great first week of high school football. The return of 8Sports Blitz right here on ABC 8 was great, ran so smoothly. We had so many great people working on that show here at WRIC, and to see it to come together and have a great first week of the high school football season was great. So let's go ahead and get this thing started to kind of give you an idea of what we're going to be doing each week. We're going to break down the biggest games from the college football weekend that took place with our Virginia teams, and then we'll do some high school football, and then once the NFL season starts, we'll talk a little Washington Commanders as well. If you're watching on Facebook, feel free to add in some comments if you have any big questions about a certain game that happened this weekend, and that's where we're going to start off with a big win versus two big schools, and that's UVA hosting the Richmond Spiders this past weekend, Saturday night, rain-delayed game. It was a wild atmosphere out at Scott Stadium. It was actually my first experience seeing Scott Stadium and the traditions of UVA. I grew up in the state here, and I've been to multiple Virginia Tech games at Lane Stadium. So to see the other side of the coin at Scott Stadium, and the fight song, the Cavalier running out on the field with the horse, it was really cool to see their traditions and see that up close and personal on the sidelines. And we'll get into some of the stories of me being on the sidelines of these college football games and how much fun they are, and the cool things that come out from being at these games as well. But how about we talk about the game first a little bit? Virginia gets the big win over the Richmond Spiders, 34-13. Richmond entered this game, kind of hoping that maybe they could pull off another upset like they did back in 2016. During the press conference with head coach Huseman, I asked him if he thought it was a possibility that they could go into Charlottesville and come away with a win like they had a few years ago. And he joked, dang, it's been much longer than a few years ago. 8 years ago it was that Richmond went into Charlottesville and came home with a victory. This Virginia team underneath third-year head coach Tony Elliott looks improved. A lot of people were, kind of on the fence about where Tony Elliott was. If you look at odds for coaches that might be the first to get fired, his name is on that list, but I don't think that's going to happen. They get a big win in week one, 34-13 over the Spiders. Anthony Calandria was really impressive in this game. 297 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, and he got it done with his legs as well. Had a huge rush for his first series. That kind of set the tone for this UVA team. Richmond ended up going with Kyle Wickersham at quarterback. That was a big question. Who was going to be the starter for the Spiders this season, following a great year last year, a playoff push for the Spiders. And he played pretty well in this game, 13 for 22, over 100 yards passing, and got the lone touchdown of the day for the Spiders, who moved the ball pretty well against a Power 4 opponent. They found themselves in the red zone time and time again, had a chance to score another touchdown late in this one, but were unable to do that. Kobe Pace was the most impressive on the ground for UVA rushing the ball. He had 93 yards and a score. Zachary Palmer-Smith, he was great, averaged 10 yards a carry, 76 yards, and then Foster Powell out of Highland Springs had a pretty good game, 14 attempts with 39 yards rushing. That's a big back. He was fun to watch. As for receiving for UVA, Malachi Fields looked like he's going to be the guy for the Cavs. 100 yards receiving. Jack Greasy, he had a touchdown catch, 57 yards. He comes from a big background of football, so it's good to see him get going. And Terrell Harris had a great touchdown as well. We actually got some video from this game as well from this past week, and it was a pretty impressive showing from UVA. Obviously, here's the Terrell touchdown right there for you. Great atmosphere out there. Entering this game for UVA, they had so many close games last year, close losses, that there was a big question mark of, if they could just win this game here, get an extra field goal, get a stop here and there. That UVA team easily could have had 8 wins last year, even though they finished without a bowl bid. But the Spiders, they go on the road. They looked relatively impressive, and at the end of the day, it was kind of over before it started. just before halftime, right after the Spiders get into the end zone, there was a 2.5-hour rain delay in this game. So they went over the loudspeaker and made the announcement that everyone go to leave the stadium. Like, we're going to go into a delay. And so the teams came off the field. They went to their locker rooms, and we all kind of just sat around waiting, looking at each other. When's this game going to resume? Will it resume? And after a 2.5-hour rain delay, they do get back out onto the field and complete the game. In terms of Richmond, they're big standouts in this one. We'll show you the Wickersham touchdown here. That's the guy right there I wanted to highlight. The Maryland transfer. He was great in this game, multiple catches. Here's the Wickersham touchdown into the end zone. Gave me a nice little dance right there. Spotted me out shooting this game. And it was a good drive to kick things off for Richmond. They do fall in week one, though. 34-13, Nick DiGennaro, I think I said that right, the most impressive. 7 receptions. He had a fumble in this game, which kind of probably he thinks it wasn't a great game for him because of that fumble. But the Richmond defense, they did hold UVA to 3-11 on third down, and they got a pick off of Tony Muskett. Of course, Muskett started a couple games for UVA last year, but went 0 for 3 in this one with a pick. Not a great game for him. Looking forward to next week, though, UVA, they're going to go to Wake Forest for an early ACC game. Surprising to see that early ACC game. We've seen what happened with Florida State. They're 0-2 in the ACC already. Their dreams of going to an ACC championship probably already have ended before the season has started. 0-2 in the conference, and that's what these week one games will do for you. And we were able to today hear what head coach Tony Elliott had to say about this Wake Forest offense, and of course what to expect with that with the read option that Dave Clawson runs down there in Winston-Salem. Check it out.
You got to figure out how to attack it, right? But they do a really good job of recruiting the right personnel to run that system, and they've been highly effective. They've scored a bunch of points. They've had a lot of yards. They can run the ball. They can pass the ball. So it's something that you don't necessarily have to change wholesale like you would preparing for an option, because that's completely different. But they do force you to be assignment sound, like an option offense.
So there you have it. They go down to Wake Forest. That game is set to kick off in the evening. I think it's a 4:00 kick for that one. Let's pull this one up here for see what time they play. There it is, right there on the screen. 7:00. As for the Cavaliers, they're 3.5-point favorites in this game, which is I think a fair spread. For that being said. All time, the Cavs lead the series 34-17. Wake Forest, though, they've won the last 5 meetings. Virginia has not beaten the Demon Deacons since 2017, a 17-16 win with Al Groh as the head coach. And, of course, the Demon Deacons, they win week 1 45-13 over North Carolina A&T. As for the Spiders, they are back at home for their home opener. They'll face off against Wofford at 3:30. The only meeting between these two teams, 2017. And it was, of course, the Richmond Spiders that got a win in that game way back there in 2017. Wofford, they did defeat Gardner-Webb 21-20 to begin their season, but Gardner-Webb not quite as a good football program as Spiders. So we'll see what's going to go on over on the campus of U of R. I'll be at that game, so we'll have full coverage on ABC 8 Saturday night, so be sure to tune in for that. Moving things along here, the Virginia Tech Hokies, man, disappointing start to the season for the Hokies. They fall in overtime to Vanderbilt 34-27. Despite a huge second-half comeback in this game, Kyron Drones, 22 for 33, threw for over 300 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick that really wasn't his fault. It was a batted line at the line of scrimmage. The big storyline and the big takeaway from this game, though, is just how great Diego Pavia played in this game. 190 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, 100 yards rushing, another touchdown. It's kind of the same scenario that we've seen with Virginia Tech for the past couple of years underneath Brent Pryce at a rushing quarterback, and the same thing with Justin Fuente, to be honest with you. But a running quarterback making his presence known, and the Hokies defense had a really hard time stopping the Commodores all game long. the Commodores entered this game with a game plan, and they stuck to it. The Commodores wanted to hold on to the ball. They wanted to limit Virginia Tech's production and limit their possessions, and they were able to do that. And it put Virginia Tech down 17-0 to start the game, and from there they had to come back into halftime. They made some adjustments, and they looked good, and they took a fourth quarter lead. But it's almost as if they ran out of gas there at the end. They couldn't get a stop. They couldn't score when they got the ball left with 2 minutes. They got lucky with a missed field goal that would have won the game for Vanderbilt in overtime, and then they couldn't stop Vanderbilt in that overtime period, and they couldn't score in overtime, giving the win to the Commodores. And what was quite the disappointing start to the season for the Hokies. They were a 14 or 13-point favorite in this game. Just about every single body in the country other than Lee Corso predicted that Virginia Tech was going to beat the Commodores to start their season. Their name's been getting thrown around for playoff contention, that they could be a dark horse in the ACC, and they go out week one and really struggle. The good thing for the Hokies, though, is a non-conference game. Their season still in front of them. They can still obviously make a push, and even losing one ACC game to Miami or Clemson, they could still find themselves in the conversation at the end of the year. But they really struggled in a lot of areas of this game. You see the rushing stats there: 9 carries for Tootin, just 34 yards. Malachi Thomas, who we heard so much about in the offseason, only got the ball 1 time as well. Allie Jennings, he was the big star of the day for the Hokies offense. 91 yards and a touchdown catch, was by himself in that touchdown. I think I could have scored that one if they put me out there. Completely busted coverage for the Hokies, took advantage of it. And the defense really struggled as well. Gave up 190 pass yards, almost 200 yards rushing as well. And you see the time of possession there at the bottom of the screen. Vanderbilt, 34 minutes. They had the ball 10 more minutes than the Hokies did, and that was the big difference maker in this game. The Hokies really couldn't get much going on. Early in this game, a great comeback. Some exciting stuff happened for Virginia Tech, but at the end of the day, they moved to 0-1, and now they turn their attention to Marshall. They're 19.5-point favorites over the Thundering Herd. They're 11-3 all time against the Thundering Herd, but what happened last year, right? Marshall won 24-17. The previous time that Marshall had taken down Virginia Tech was in 1940. Pre-World War II was the last time that Marshall was able to knock off the Hokies, but they did it back in 2023. That kind of started that spiral that Hokie fans had to watch there for a couple of seasons. So it was interesting to see the Virginia Tech offense finally, after a long offseason of excitement and hype. But at the end of the day, we got to see what happens next week when they play a really good Thundering Herd.
We didn't play well enough or coach well enough to win the game, and they did. They outplayed us and outcoached us. I give those guys credit. We have to be better. Have to have a better plan. It doesn't take away from how tremendous Hokie Nation was. The turnout was incredible, and we all appreciate it as players and coaches, and understand how special it is. We're very, very fortunate that way. We all look forward to the crowd for our first home game against Marshall. The students, the student section, sellout crowd. It's a special deal being back in Lane Stadium. We're looking forward to it. Celebrating the '99 team. You don't have many opportunities to celebrate a team that played for a national championship, and we'll do that, which is special. There's a lot of personal ties to the Marshall program, for our team, for our program, for our staff, for our players. It's meaningful. And this is a good team we're playing, a group that's beaten Notre Dame recently, that's beaten us, that's taken North Carolina State to the wire. I mean, we're going to get their best effort. They're well coached. Coach Huff does a good job. I expect it to be a good football game.
Yeah, speaking of Coach Huff, 41 years old, one of the youngest coaches in the country, and has found a lot of success at Marshall. He's in his, I think, 4th season at Marshall. So big game for the Hokies. That's set to kick at 4:30. Let's move on to Virginia Union. They kicked off their season on Saturday as well. A dominant win over Kentucky State. These numbers are fun to look at. Virginia Union 69, Kentucky State 7. The Virginia Union quarterback RJ went 12 for 17, 233 yards and 2 touchdowns. Impressive stuff from them. But this was Jada Byers, right? He could be the best running back in all of Division II football. 211 yards on the ground. That's his 8th game in his career with over 200 yards rushing. Had 3 touchdowns, along as 67. He averaged 15 yards a carry, which is unheard of. And they got a pretty good duo as well. Jermaine Jones had added 69 yards of his own. But that defense is what really impressed. We talked with Coach Parker before the game, and he talked about how well defense travels, I should say. And sure enough, they showed up. They held them under 100 yards of offense on the day. 2 turnovers, both picks. Held them below 70 yards rushing. Just 28 yards passing for the Thoroughbreds. So big win for Virginia Union to kick off their season, but it gets tough this week as they go on the road to Hampton to take on a Pirates team that fell to Morgan State 30-28 last Saturday. So a big D2, D1 matchup. Of course, we saw Virginia State knock off a Division I program last year when they took down Norfolk State, and that's the same situation we got going on with Virginia State, who started their year 1-0 as they got a big win over Benedict College, 23-7. Romello Williams, goes 13 for 21, nearly 200 yards passing with a touchdown. They're going to have a great running back room as well. Jamel Williams, 23 attempts, 158 yards, had a long touchdown of 82 yards, and Rabbit Smith added 38 yards on the ground as well. The Virginia State defense looked impressive, too. 5 sacks on the day. They held Benedict College to 6 for 15. So an impressive showing there, but that's the big question is who they play this week. They go on the road to Norfolk State for the 2nd year in a row. Last year, they knocked them off, and which shocked the MEAC and the college football world as they got a big goal line stand, a blocked field goal, and they got a big win in Norfolk. We'll see if they can do it again. That game's set to kick at 4 o'clock, and we'll have coverage of that one this upcoming weekend as well. So be sure to tune in Saturday night at 11 o'clock for highlights from all those games. All right, how about we continue with some high school football now. 8Sports Blitz is back. Week 2 of the season is here. We got a couple of Game of the Week options for you here. Thomas Dale at LC Bird is set to be an awesome game, as is Petersburg at Armstrong. I got a couple of notes here written down. Matt Bland and the LC Bird Skyhawks, I believe they are. Got a big win over James River, 31-0 under first-year head coach Matt Bland. And then Kevin Tucker with Thomas Dale, they got a 17-0 win over Atlee. So that's going to be a showdown. And, in fact, you can still vote for this for the next couple of minutes. But to be honest with you guys, this one might already be decided. I'm trying to find my browser. Here it is. Petersburg and Armstrong, man, their fans have showed out to vote for this thing. Looks like that's going to be our 8Sports Blitz Game of the Week. The poll closes in a matter of moments. So be sure to get on and vote for that one. Maybe if you're an LC Bird fan or Thomas Dale fan, you can get your friends on here to watch as well. Speaking of great games that we're expecting to see this weekend, some other ones include Highland Springs is hosting Phoebus after they get a big win last week in our Game of the Week, 42-8. Manchester looked like a team that could compete with Highland Springs. Last year, Manchester goes 10-2. Their only losses were to the Springers. But, man, Highland Springs came out, looked like the Highland Springs that we all know, and got a big win, 42-8. Another interesting matchup I'm keeping an eye on is Matoka at War Hill. This Matoka team has some of the best talent in this state. They have 4 guys going to a Power 4 school. Caleb Williams is a defensive line commit for South Carolina. Bryce Yates will play receiver or defensive back at Pittsburgh. Dylan Newton-Short will play receiver for UVA, and Montino Williams will be playing for UVA as well come next year. So this team alone, a high school team, has 4 guys on one roster that will be playing Power 5 football. I mean, the talent is loaded. Another interesting matchup to watch, Mechanicsville at Powhatan. To kind of talk about that Armstrong team a little bit, because it's looking like they're going to be our 8Sports Blitz Game of the Week. This was the matchup last week, and it's worth showing you. Armstrong, they went on the road to Collegiate, and Collegiate took a lead in this game, and it looked like it was going to be a back-and-forth game, and that's when Jakai Chavez showed up. He gets the handoff here, gets into the end zone, and it looked like a nice little run, gave Paul a nice wave to the camera, great shooting there, and then the guy went off. He can run the ball. Guess what? He can also catch the ball. Hail Mary, give it to him. He's going to score. This game was back and forth. Armstrong had tied it up. Collegiate took a lead with this touchdown here, and it set up a dramatic final play of the game. Last play, 4 seconds on the clock. Armstrong threw it up to who else but Chavez. His 6th touchdown of the game is what you see right there. A Hail Mary, they stormed the field. An absolute great atmosphere to kick off the high school football season. And it was a blast to watch and to be a part of and to kick off a great show here on 8Sports Blitz. Week 2 coming up this Friday. We got a couple of good games that we're expecting to see. It's looking like Petersburg and Armstrong's going to be the one to give Petersburg a little love. They did go get a big shutout. They put 40 points on Booker T, who came to town from the Norfolk area, and Bruce Smith was in attendance to flip the coin toss, and he had to watch his former high school lose 42-0 to Petersburg Crimson Wave. So we'll see if Petersburg can find that success again against a Ja'Kai Chavez-led team that was kind of the spotlight of Week 1 of the high school football season. But for anyone that tuned in this week, thanks so much. Got a couple of comments here. Tamaya Wilson, good evening to you as well. Thanks for tuning in to the first edition of 8Sports Nightcap. We'll be doing this each Tuesday, talking about the previous Virginia Tech, UVA, Virginia State, Virginia Union games, as well as a little bit of high school football. And then once the course of the NFL season starts as well, we'll talk some Washington Commanders football. For the future, if you guys are watching, you want some thoughts on a couple of things that happened over the weekend. We can do that as well. I think the biggest storyline from the college football season is probably the fact that Florida State's 0-2 and out of contention in the ACC before most teams have even played a second game because they had that Week 0 loss to Boston College in Dublin. So, yes, we will cover Caroline High School. We're going to try to get out to every single high school at some point during the season. We got a great team that have worked on our high school football show, and it was a lot of fun to put together and see that come to fruition right after not having a high school football show here for a couple of years. But that's going to wrap things up here for the first edition of our 8Sports Nightcap. Like I said, be sure to tune in each Tuesday. We'll talk college football, high school, and NFL as the season gets underway. I do want to mention a couple of other games happening this weekend. Hampton-Sydney, they're going to host Delaware Valley at 1 o'clock for their season opener. Today they named their captains, which included Logan Cohn of Henrico. So he was named a captain for Hampton-Sydney, and Randolph-Macon, they'll start their season on the road at Dickinson. I wanted to make sure we got that in there as well. But that's going to wrap things up here for 8Sports Nightcap. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next week. Have a great night, everybody.